Minister of National Security, the Honourable Stuart R, will address issues related to the borders and the management of our nationals who are returning. Minister Young.
Thank you very much, Minister Cox, Minister Diyal Singh, my cabinet colleagues, CMO Dr. Parasaram, and members of the media and the wider viewing and listening public. I'd like to start off this morning's briefing from my perspective of assuring all of our nationals who are not in Trinidad and Tobago that want to return, you will be permitted to return. As we've said, and as I would repeat here this morning, what we are doing is we're very carefully managing the process. And believe you me, we do understand the difficulties that each and every one of you nationals faces who are outside of Trinidad and Tobago wanting to return, as well as your families and what it is you're going through. As I personally sit and read the hundreds and thousands of applications, each one tells a story, and we are very aware of at the government level as we continue to manage the process. So I'd just like to explain it very briefly to you all this morning. And I'd like to start by reminding that the COVID-19 cases in Trinidad and Tobago were all imported. The 116 cases were all traced back to importation. Out of those 116, 52 came off of a cruise ship, and persons who were infected by being on that cruise ship, and they came back in Trinidad. We, the citizens, have managed this well by listening to our medical health experts, and we've reached a point where we've begun to reopen the economy, but also manage more and more of the return of our nationals. And I'd spend some time on that process this morning. On the 30th of January, you all will recall, we took our first precaution, which was travel restrictions with persons coming from China. Over the next few weeks, as we continue to monitor it based on our medical health experts, we added a number of countries with travel restrictions. Then on the 12th of March, 2020 of this year, we announced a decision that we were no longer permitting cruise ships and persons to disembark from cruise ships onto Trinidad and Tobago shores. On that same day, we asked persons to only travel if it was absolutely necessary, essential, or emergency travel. That's the 12th of March. On the 17th of March, we took a decision to close our borders to non-nationals. This was followed, again based on the advice of our healthcare professionals, whose advice we have been taking in a measured way. On the 23rd of March, we closed our borders to all nationals and non-nationals on the 23rd of March. These measures were critical in our management in preventing the spread of COVID. By then, we had received an importation of a number of cases. Fortunately, our parallel healthcare system built out to deal with COVID was able to handle those. And again, kudos and thanks to all of those in our healthcare facilities, our frontline workers, who did a remarkable job in managing that process and getting us to where we are today. The purpose of closing our borders was to allow us, the government, to protect you, the population in Trinidad and Tobago. This virus, as we've said time and time again, and it's worth repeating, is spread by contact. The virus, as I said a short while ago, and I will repeat, is imported into Trinidad and Tobago. So by shutting our borders, we were able to ring fence our population in Trinidad and Tobago and manage it very carefully by combining a number of measures to get us to the point that we are at now, where at this date, fortunately, we don't have any positive cases in our healthcare system, so we're managing the opening of the economy and the return of our nationals. In allowing the entry of our nationals, it was advised, we were advised, and we took that advice, that to manage the possibility of the reimportation of COVID-19 and to minimize its spread, we will need to quarantine persons and quarantine the returning persons as opposed to allowing them to go home and self-quarantine. This is a critical pillar of our continued management of the entry of nationals back into Trinidad and Tobago. And we've seen how it is working as we go through a number of cycles. If we were to just permit individuals or nationals to return and go straight home, we risk this potential spread, community spread of COVID in our communities. So the advice that we've accepted and that we're working with is that we will state quarantine those persons returning to Trinidad and Tobago, and in a number that we could manage, if God forbid there turns out to be a reimportation of the virus, as may happen, and it doesn't overwhelm our public healthcare system. I'd like to explain the procedure that is currently applicable. Each case for an exemption, request for an exemption, is considered on a case-by-case basis. We are managing very carefully the return of our nationals and ensuring, importantly, that our public healthcare system is not overwhelmed and that we can handle it. As I just explained, the state quarantine process is an essential and critical pillar of our continued management. We don't want to overload our resources. This is being done to protect not only those who are here in our population, but also those who are returning. Another critical part of the formula, as advised by our medical experts that we've accepted, is you don't want to mix persons. So you don't want to mix 5 persons coming from one area with another 10, etc., and therefore potentially expose them to spreads that they may not have had otherwise. We have thousands of applications, understandably so. As we said time and time again, there are over 330,000 nationals of Trinidad and Tobago outside there. We are receiving thousands of applications from all over the globe. Just as I walked in here this morning, I was reading one from somebody in the Pacific Ocean making an application. Persons as far away as India, Bangladesh, Australia. We have persons all over Europe, the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, Central America, our Caribbean region, Gulf of Mexico. These are just some of the areas where we are dealing with persons applying. I will repeat at this stage, it is our intention to bring back, to allow every single national who wants to return, but in a manner as we've been doing, where we will protect the population and those returning by making sure our system isn't overwhelmed. We do empathize with every single national and their family as we go through this difficult time, remembering there still is this global pandemic. The procedure is as follows. We receive an application. The application is considered. We then ask for confirmation of nationality by asking for a copy of the biodata page of the person's passport. We then ask for their proposed flight details. At that stage, it is indicated that they will be permitted entry back into Trinidad and Tobago, so they can use that to go and make their flight arrangements. The final approval cannot be given until we have the final flight details. This is a process, as I was reminding my permanent secretary, we have been through now well over 10, 20 times. So you apply, we consider it, we say provide us with proof of nationality and your proposed flight details. We will indicate in writing that you will be granted approval, and we await the final flight details to return to Trinidad and Tobago. The government does not get involved in the flight details. The government is not acting in a manner where we are making the arrangements for flights. And I'd like to put on record, this process has been working. You all would recall the 33 that returned from Barbados, those that returned from Suriname, those that returned from Grenada, some other private ones. We've had a few come in via vessels who have been outside there, and these types of things. At no stage has the government engaged with any other government to provide any services. Once we indicate to our nationals who have requested, and we are going down that route, for example, the Guyana, the Suriname, the Venezuela, that we're going to grant approval, they can then utilize that to make their flight arrangements. When they provide us with the final flight details, we do grant the final exemption. Because what the final exemption under the hand of the permanent secretary is an indication to our local authorities, the civil aviation or immigration authorities, customs and excise, that these persons will be coming in. These are the details of when they will be coming in, how they will be coming in, and we say the crew cannot disembark, etc. We cannot provide that final document until we have the final details. With respect to Venezuela and Guyana, we indicated a few weeks ago that permission would be granted. We have had persons return. We have had over 25 return from Guyana. They made their arrangements. We went through the process I just outlined. They arrived. Last week, we had a national return from Venezuela. She made her arrangements, chartered a plane after we'd granted the exemption, provided us with the details, arrived here, and is currently in state quarantine. I repeat, with respect to Venezuela, that is the process that was used. At no point in time did the government of Trinidad and Tobago get involved with the government of Venezuela with respect to that national's return. So we know that that is the process that is used. With respect to some of the nationals we have now in Venezuela, there seems to have been some confusion. Firstly, there was one individual who was claiming to represent a lot. Then when we indicated to that individual that permission is granted for these nationals to return, another individual popped up with a travel agency. So we're now faced with more than one individual claiming to be representing a group of people. That did not stop us. We continued to say, okay, fine, provide us with the details. We got the biodata pages of the passports. And this is for the return of nationals. We're still faced with some non-nationals asking to come into Trinidad and Tobago. In those circumstances, the answer is no. We are dealing with our nationals first, bearing in mind the state quarantine system. So we had two sets of people claiming to represent those who wanted to return from Venezuela. We did not make it an issue. We said, look, permission will be granted, provide us with the flight details. I'm now seeing it suggested that the government has to get involved to make arrangements with the government of Venezuela. We asked, we made the request, kindly show us where you've made a request of the government of Venezuela for the flight to take place, because they're telling us they're chartering a plane, a Venezuelan airline plane, and we have not been provided with the communication between themselves and the government of Venezuela saying that we need to be involved. But what they may not have known is we already know the process, because we had an individual return to Trinidad last week from Venezuela without the involvement of the government at all. The government is not going to go and get itself involved in what it doesn't need to get involved with. With respect to the nationals in Guyana, we had indicated few weeks ago that the nationals in Guyana, once you'd made your applications, you would be permitted entry. We've had 25 of them, I believe, enter Trinidad already. We're waiting on the rest. Yesterday, I repeat, yesterday they reached out, 10 persons, it may now go up to 11 or 12, reached out to the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of National Security and advised us that they believe they're able to make arrangements with a certain charter airline in Guyana to arrive on Saturday. That is part of the process. So now that we receive that, again we confirm in writing, you will be permitted entry to Trinidad and Tobago. Kindly provide us with the final flight details, and that is what I expect to happen, because it's a process we've gone through before. There is no delay on our part. We want to get these persons back. We've been working with the Ministry of Health and their personnel to identify where these persons will be quarantined by the state on arrival. This is a process we've gone through a few times now. So I'm not sure where the confusion has arisen, but I've come here to clarify that from the government's perspective, we have done all that we have to do, and we are assisting the system, and we're doing what we have done before to get these nationals back. With respect to the cruise ships, as you all are aware, we indicated on Friday that we are now prepared to start dealing with the cruise ship workers, our nationals who are on cruise ships. There are a number of vessels in the Caribbean region and outside of the Caribbean region with our nationals on. Fortunately, the two closest ones that were in a state of readiness, we brought back 6 on Saturday, and then we brought back 52. We had granted permission for 53, but one of our nationals didn't disembark on Monday. So 6 plus 52 from 2 different vessels. I, along with a government team, we have been in communication with Royal Caribbean, trying to make the arrangements. One, to find out how many of our nationals are still there. One email said 264 are on the, I think it's Vision on the Seas ship that is now in St. Vincent. Then another email said it was 300, with another 60 on other ships that they would then consolidate. Those are the discussions taking place right now. Of course, in our monitoring of the system, we have seen that some cruise ship workers who have disembarked in Jamaica, Grenada, and now St. Vincent have tested positive for COVID-19. So this is something we're mindful of. If the number, which is what we're seeing, is as much as 360 persons, it would immediately overwhelm our system, because we are also bringing back others, as I've just described, including tonight I'll be having a Zoom meeting with the principals of Mona, Cave Hill, and St. Augustine to try starting making the final arrangements to bring back our students from Jamaica and Barbados. So we're mindful of that as well. That will be well over 200. So the conversation and the communication we've sent to Royal Caribbean is allow us to use your ship to quarantine our nationals Are you open and available to that? So therefore, nationals can be quarantined, and our health personnel will manage that quarantine process. And that is where we are now. The ball is in their court. I'm waiting for them to come back. But we are mindful that from that same vessel, persons have disembarked in other jurisdictions, and it appears as though they have tested positive. We will get further details on that. So we need to manage the process very carefully going forward. This is not an indication that we will not be taking back our nationals. We will be taking back. But as we've said all along, it will be on a managed schedule that is very fluid and what our resources can handle. We've been in discussions with the Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Health, to find where we can make more facilities potentially available. So as we get more information with respect to the return of our nationals, including our students, and as we begin to deal with nationals, I have nationals all over the globe, some of them now saying that they will charter their own aircraft to come in. From a fairness point of view, that can't be the test at this stage, because it can't be that someone who can charter a plane and fly in will get precedence over some others who may be having more needy cases. Each case is being dealt with on a case-by-case basis by the government, and all of our nationals will return, but return in a fashion that we've been very, very careful to point out, which is a managed fashion that is not going to overwhelm our system, so we could continue to protect all of our population here in Trinidad and Tobago and get our nationals back safely as well. Thank you very much, Minister Cox.
Thank you very much, Minister. Members of